The moment my son's girlfriend wrinkled her nose and told me my work uniform made the living room look like a staff locker room, something inside me quietly broke open. I had just come through the front door at 6:30 in the morning, still wearing my Loblaws vest, the one with the little name tag that said Margaret in black block letters. My feet ached the way they always do after 8 hours on a concrete warehouse floor. I had spent the night pulling stock, lifting cases of canned tomatoes and 24 packs of sparkling water, dragging pallets down fluorescent aisles while most of the city slept. I do the overnight shift 3 times a week. It keeps me moving, keeps the bills paid, and honestly, keeps me sane. I hung my vest on the hook by the front door, the same hook I had used for 31 years. My late husband installed it the week we moved in. A simple brass hook, nothing fancy, but it held everything. I came home with coats, scarves, bags, and now, apparently, the wrong thing. My son's girlfriend was standing at the kitchen counter in a silk robe, stirring a matcha latte she had made with the frother I bought at Canadian Tire last Christmas. She looked at the vest, then at me, with an expression I had seen her use on expired yogurt. "Could you maybe not leave that right there?" she said, gesturing toward the hook. "My friends are coming over Saturday, and it's kind of an eyesore. It looks like a grocery store in here." I stood in my own hallway, 68 years old, still catching my breath from a night of stocking produce and frozen meals, and I said nothing. I just looked at her. She went back to stirring her drink like the conversation was already finished. From the bedroom down the hall, I could hear my son's alarm going off. The 3rd time it had gone off in a row. It was almost 7. He would silence it and roll over. I knew this because I knew everything that happened in this condo. I paid for this condo. I had been paying for it since 1993. I went to my room, sat on the edge of the bed, and looked at my hands. My knuckles were red from the cold of the refrigerated section. There was a small bruise forming on my left forearm where I had bumped the corner of a metal shelving unit sometime around 3 in the morning. 68 years old, still showing up, and somehow I was the eyesore. Hello, friends. I'm Megan, and this is the story of Margaret, a woman who worked overnight shifts at 68 while her adult son and his girlfriend slept until noon in her home. The morning the girlfriend complained about her uniform was not the moment Margaret lost her patience. It was the moment she found her clarity. Tell me, does any of this feel familiar to you? If you had walked through my home on a typical Tuesday afternoon, you would have thought you wandered into a very comfortable bed and breakfast where the guests never checked out. The blinds stayed shut past noon. The kitchen always had a faint smell of something reheated. Dishes from the night before sat in the sink through the following evening. Someone was always on the couch with a laptop, a phone, a half-eaten bowl of cereal gone soggy on the coffee table. My son was 34. He had moved back in 2 years earlier, after a lease fell through in Mississauga. Just temporarily, he had said. Just until he sorted things out. His girlfriend had arrived 6 months after that, with 2 suitcases, a box of skincare products, and the quiet assumption that temporary had no expiration date. I worked nights because the overnight shift paid $1.50 more per hour. I worked nights because the daytime hours were often loud with them in the condo. I worked nights because somewhere along the way, the daylight hours in my own home had stopped feeling like mine. 3 mornings a week, I came through that door with sore feet and cold hands and a plastic bag from Tim Hortons, a medium double-double, and a cranberry bran muffin, my small ritual. I would sit at the kitchen table for 20 minutes before sleeping. Just 20 minutes of quiet before the rest of the world woke up. The condo was mine then, just briefly, before the day began for everyone else. I paid the condo fees. $540 a month, a number that had been climbing steadily for years. I paid the hydro bill, the internet, the property tax. I bought groceries, the good kind, because my son's girlfriend had opinions about food organic this, free-range that, the almond milk that cost 3 times the regular. I did not complain. I adjusted. I told myself this was family. The morning after the vest comment, I sat on my back balcony with my tea and thought about that word, family. My son had not asked once, not once, how the night shift was going. Not asked if my back hurt, if the winter walks to the bus stop were manageable, if I had enough left over at the end of the month for anything beyond the fixed costs. He did ask, the previous week, whether I could pick up an extra jar of the fancy Dijon mustard next time I was at the store. I looked out at the parking lot below. My 12-year-old Civic sat under a light post, slightly rusted at the wheel wells, reliable as ever. I had driven it to my overnight shifts through 3 Canadian winters, through snowstorms bad enough that the highway signs said, "Stay home," through mornings when the temperature sat at -26 and the car door froze shut and I had to pour warm water over the latch just to get inside. My son's girlfriend had used the Civic twice to drive to a yoga studio in the East End. Both times, she came back and mentioned the seat adjustment wasn't where she'd left it. I finished my tea. Then I went inside, walked past the vest on the hook, and looked at it for a long moment. Then I took it down and hung it neatly on the back of my bedroom door. I was not doing it for her. I was doing it because something had shifted in my chest overnight, something quiet and certain, and I did not want the vest to be part of whatever happened next. The thought arrived the way useful thoughts usually do, not loudly, not with drama, just clearly. What would happen to their comfortable Saturday if this condo was no longer available to them? I held that thought carefully on the way to sleep. It was still there when I woke up at 3 in the afternoon. 4 days later, the real moment arrived. Not louder than the vest comment, just sharper. It was a Saturday, exactly as she had promised. Her friends came over, 3 of them, mid-30s, wearing the kind of effortless brunch outfits that suggest a lot of effort. I had just come in from a grocery run, 2 bags from No Frills because the Loblaws employee discount didn't cover the way that household ate. I had bags in both hands when I pushed through the front door. The living room was rearranged. Not dramatically, just enough. The armchair had been turned. The small lamp from my bedroom end table was now on the bookshelf. My stack of library books, I have a standing library habit. 3 books every 2 weeks since my husband passed, had been moved off the coffee table and placed in a neat pile on the floor near the baseboard. My son's girlfriend was laughing at something and stopped when she saw me. "Oh," she said, with that careful brightness people use when they're hoping a situation resolves itself quickly. "Margaret's home." One of her friends smiled politely. My son appeared from the kitchen, holding a bottle of white wine. He looked at the grocery bags, then at me, with the expression of someone who has been caught not thinking about something they should have been thinking about. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Good timing. We're almost out of soda water. Did you grab any?" I set the bags on the kitchen counter. I had 2 liters of President's Choice soda water, because I had checked the fridge before leaving and it was running low. I had checked. He had not checked. I had bought it. He had not thought to buy it. His girlfriend's friend, the tall one, in the taupe blazer, glanced around the living room with the particular look of someone privately taking inventory. Her eyes landed on a framed photo on the bookshelf. Me and my husband, the summer before he got sick. We were standing on the shore at Sauble Beach, squinting into the sun, laughing at something the photographer said. I loved that photo. "Is this your parents?" the friend asked my son's girlfriend, tilting her head at the frame. My son's girlfriend gave a small laugh. No, that's her." She gestured toward me with her wine glass. "She owns the place." The friend turned and smiled at me pleasantly. "Oh, lovely. Are you downsizing soon?" The question hung in the kitchen air like the steam off the kettle. Downsizing. As if the natural conclusion of my life was to make myself smaller, to quietly shrink away and hand this place over to whoever had been using it longest. I opened the fridge and put the soda water inside. I took my time. Then I turned and smiled at the friend, because none of this was her fault. "Not downsizing," I said pleasantly. "Something else, actually." I left them to their Saturday and walked to my bedroom. I closed the door. I sat in the chair by the window that looks out toward the tree line at the edge of the parking lot. 3 bare maples stood against a gray November sky, branches perfectly still. I opened my laptop. The Zoocasa listing for my condo had been sitting in my browser bookmarks for 3 weeks. I had looked at it once, just to understand the numbers. The market had been strong. Units in this building, 2-bedroom with underground parking, had been moving for somewhere between $460,000 and $500,000. I had paid $112,000 in 1993. The mortgage had been paid off since 2009. I picked up my phone. There was a number I had taken down from a flyer someone had left in the mailbox room. Sandra Kwan Royal LePage. I had folded it and tucked it into my Bible, the place I keep things I am not ready to use yet. I went and retrieved it. She answered on the third ring, professional and warm. I told her my address. I told her the square footage, the parking spot number, the locker storage included. Then I asked her the question that had been forming quietly in the back of my mind for longer than I was willing to admit. If I wanted to sell without a lot of back and forth, I said, how quickly could something like this move in the current market? There was a brief pause. Then she said, honestly, a well-priced unit in that area? Sometimes under 2 weeks. I looked out the window at the bare maples. 2 weeks. I'd like you to come have a look, I said. Sandra arrived the following Tuesday at 9 in the morning. My son was asleep. His girlfriend was asleep. I had been up since before 6, back from my shift, showered, coffee made. I had also, quietly and without announcement, run the vacuum over the carpet in the living room and wiped down the kitchen counters. Not for staging purposes, just because the cleanliness of my home had not been keeping up with my standards, and I wanted it back. She was a composed woman in her late 40s, dark blazer, sensible boots, the kind of realtor who looks at a room the way a doctor looks at an X-ray, scanning for what's actually there, not what you want to see. She stepped inside, looked around slowly, and said, "Good bones." I liked her immediately. We walked through quietly. She noted the natural light in the living room, the original hardwood in the hallway, the storage locker value. She made small notes on a tablet. She was not pushy, not performative. She observed. When we reached the second bedroom, she paused. The door was closed. From inside came the slow rhythm of deep sleep and a charger cord snaking under the door. "Other occupants?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "My son and his girlfriend." She nodded once. "Do they know you're considering selling?" "Not yet." She absorbed this with the calm of someone who had walked through every variety of family situation this province could produce. She simply nodded again and moved on. When we finished the walkthrough, we sat at the kitchen table with coffee. She showed me comparable sales in the building, in the neighborhood. Then she looked at me directly. "What's your priority?" she asked. "Maximum price, or clean and fast?" I thought about the hook by the front door, the library books on the floor, the soda water. "I want it settled," I said. "Clean and fast." She nodded. "Then we price it right from the start, and don't get greedy. You'll get strong offers within the first few days." We shook hands across my kitchen table. She would send a photographer Thursday morning. I was pouring the last of the coffee when my son shuffled in, barefoot, wearing the gray hoodie he had lived in since October. He stopped when he saw Sandra's business card still on the table. He looked at it, then at me. "Who's Sandra Kwan?" he asked. I rinsed my mug at the sink before answering. "A realtor." The pause that followed was so complete, I could hear the building's heating system cycling on in the ceiling. "A realtor," he repeated. "Royal LePage." He stared at the card. "Mom, why is there a realtor's card on our table?" "My table," I said, not sharply, just accurately. He looked up at me then, really looked at me, which was actually the first time in recent memory that he had done that. "Are you selling the condo?" I dried my hands. "I'm thinking seriously about it." He put the card down slowly. "You're serious?" "I'm always serious about things I've thought through." He pulled out a chair and sat, which told me he understood something had changed, because he never sat down to talk. He always talked while moving on the way to the fridge, on the way to the couch, always in transit. "Can we talk about this?" he said. "We are talking about it. I mean really talk." I sat across from him. "Go ahead." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Where is this coming from?" I looked at my son, 34 years old, still sleeping until 10, still drifting through days in my home without contributing to its shape or its costs. Bright man. He had always been bright. That was part of what made this so hard to understand. It's been building a while, I said. He rubbed the back of his neck. Is this about the uniform thing, she said. It started before the uniform thing, I said. The uniform thing was just the moment I stopped telling myself it was fine. He didn't answer right away. In the hallway, I heard the bedroom door open. His girlfriend appeared, saw us at the table, and immediately read the room. What's going on? She asked. My son looked at her. My mom is selling the condo. She laughed, a short, reflexive laugh that stopped abruptly when she realized neither of us was laughing. You're joking, she said. I looked at her evenly. No, she looked at my son. He looked back at her. Then she crossed her arms and turned to me. You can't just decide that without talking to us. I did talk, I said. I just did it with a realtor instead of you. She shook her head. This is unbelievable. We live here. I know, I said. That's something we should have had a clearer conversation about a long time ago. The photographer came Thursday. His name was James. He was 26 and professional and had a lens that cost more than my first car. He arrived at 8:30 and spent an hour and 40 minutes capturing my home. The morning light in the living room, the hardwood, the balcony looking out over the tree line. He moved the lamp back from the bookshelf and returned my library books to the coffee table, and neither action was directed by me. He just knew. My son's girlfriend hovered in the hallway while James worked the main rooms. She did not speak. She watched. When he moved toward the second bedroom, she stepped forward. That's our room, she said. James stopped and looked at me. It's the second bedroom, I said. It's part of the listing. Her jaw tightened. You can't put pictures of our space online. I looked at her the way I look at situations that have already been decided. James, go ahead. I'll remove personal items from the frame. She turned and went back to the room. I heard the closet sliding open, the quick shuffle of someone trying to make a space presentable in 30 seconds because they had not prepared, because they had not believed any of this was real. My son sat on the couch through all of it, watching. When James finally packed up his equipment and left, my son looked at me from across the room. You really went through with it, he said. I told you I would. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. What happens to us, Mom? I sat in the armchair, the one that had been turned to face her friends and had since been turned back. What were you planning anyway? I asked. At some point, what was the plan? He didn't answer immediately. There wasn't one, I said, not harshly. Just honestly. He looked at the floor. It got comfortable here. I know, I said. That's the problem. That evening, Sandra called. The listing had gone live at 4 o'clock. By 7, she had 4 showing requests. One of the interested parties had already asked whether the sellers would consider a quick close. I was sitting on the balcony with a cup of red rose tea when she called. The November air was cold, the sky a clear navy blue, stars visible past the roofline of the building across the lot. I had a wool blanket over my knees that my mother had made. They move quickly when the price is right and the place is clean, Sandra said. How quickly? I asked. If one of these leads is serious, you could have an offer by the weekend. By the weekend. I looked at the bare maple trees. Inside, I could hear my son on the phone. His voice was low and serious in a way I had not heard in a long time. His girlfriend was on her laptop at the kitchen table, and for the first time since she had moved in, she was not watching something. She was searching something. I could tell by the way she kept typing, pausing, typing again. Rental listings. I recognized the energy. When I came inside, she looked up at me. What's the closing timeline if this actually sells? She asked. There was something different in her voice now. The performance was gone. She sounded like herself. Likely 60 days from accepted offer, I said. Standard for a condo in Ontario. She nodded once. 60 days. She repeated it the way you repeat a number when you are converting it into a real problem to solve. My son hung up the phone and looked at me from the hallway. I just talked to Derek, he said. Derek was his closest friend from university, now renting a 2-bedroom near Hamilton. He might have a room for a bit. That's good, I said. It's not great, he said. But it's something. He paused. What about her? His girlfriend looked up. I can call my sister, she said, slowly. She has a spare room in Guelph. The room went quiet. They looked at each other not with anger, just with the particular expression of two people realizing they had been operating without a backup plan for a very long time. My son turned to me. His voice was quieter than usual. I didn't think you'd actually do it. I know, I said. I thought you were, he stopped. I don't know what I thought. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. You thought things would stay the way they were. Yeah. He sat at the table. I did. His girlfriend closed the laptop. She looked at me and then looked away, and I could see something working in her expression. Not quite an apology, but something near its edge. I'm sorry, she said. About the vest thing. That was rude. I measured out my tea. It was. She nodded. I shouldn't have said it. I did not offer reassurance. I simply said, no, you shouldn't have. And I let it sit there, plainly, because some things deserve to sit. The first showing was Friday afternoon at 2:00. A young couple from Waterloo, both engineers, relocating for a contract in the city. They walked through my home with careful, respectful attention. They complimented the storage locker. The woman, who was 7 months pregnant and moved with that careful grace, stood at the balcony door and looked out at the tree line for a long moment. You can see the sky, she said softly. You don't always get that. My son was in his room. His girlfriend had gone to a coffee shop for the duration. I stayed in the kitchen and let Sandra guide the showing, the way it should go professionally, without the static of family tension humming in the background. After they left, Sandra turned to me. They'll be back, she said. She was right. By Saturday evening, I had 2 written offers, the young couple from Waterloo and a second buyer, a recently retired woman from North York who was also buying cash and had no conditions. No financing condition, no inspection condition. A clean offer, above asking, with a 60-day close. Sandra sent me the details while I was in the parking lot after my Friday overnight shift, sitting in the Civic with the heat running, reading my phone in the pale winter light of 7 in the morning. I called her back immediately. The cash offer, I said. Is it negotiable on timeline if I needed slightly longer? She already said she's flexible, Sandra said. She's not in a rush. She has a condo to sell herself. I sat with that for a moment. Let's accept it, I said. I heard Sandra's pen on paper. I'll prepare the acceptance documents. Congratulations, Margaret. That was the word she used. Congratulations. I sat in the Civic for another few minutes, looking at the front entrance of my building. The brass handle on the door. The small mat that said welcome that I had put there 17 years ago and replaced twice since. I drove to Tim Hortons, ordered a medium double-double, and sat in the parking lot and drank it, and felt something in my chest that I had not felt in a long time. Space. When I got home, my son was awake. Actually awake, not coincidentally awake. He was at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a coffee beside him, and there was a notebook with actual handwritten notes, numbers, timelines, a name I recognized as a property management company in Hamilton. He looked up when I came in. He looked at my face. You accepted one, he said. Yes. He closed the laptop partway. When do we need to be out? 60 days from signing. Paperwork goes through next week, so roughly mid-January. He nodded slowly. He looked tired, but not like the kind of tired that comes from sleeping too much. A different kind. Derek's room is still available, he said. It's only one room, so he paused. She's going to her sister's in Guelph for a while. We're going to figure things out separately for a bit. I set my Tim Hortons cup on the counter. I'm sorry to hear that, if it's hard. He shrugged, but it was not a dismissive shrug. It was the shrug of someone processing something out loud. Maybe it's not the worst thing. I think we both kind of stopped making decisions. Just let things stay the same. I looked at my son. Yes, I said. That's a very accurate thing to say. He looked at me then. Really looked. How long have you been unhappy here, Mom? The question surprised me with its directness. I thought about it honestly. Not unhappy, I said. Invisible. Those are different things. He was quiet for a moment. Then, the uniform comment. Among other things. He rubbed his forehead. She didn't mean it the way it landed. She's not a bad person. I know, I said. But it landed the way it landed. And the way it landed told me something about how things had gotten in this house. He nodded. He picked up his pen and looked at his notebook. Then he said something I had not expected. You worked this whole time, he said. Every week. And I never once asked how it was going. He paused. That's not okay. I said nothing for a moment. Then, no, I agreed. It wasn't. He closed the notebook. I'm going to do better. I don't know exactly what that looks like yet, but I mean it. I believed him. Not because the words were remarkable, but because of how quietly he said them. He sounded like himself, the person under the 2 years of drifting, the son I had raised. The weeks that followed moved the way major change always does. Slower in some moments, startlingly fast in others. His girlfriend moved to Guelph on a Thursday, quietly, with the same 2 suitcases she had arrived with. She said a brief goodbye in the hallway. I wished her well. I meant it. My son moved to Derek's place in Hamilton 3 weeks later. The day he left, he carried his boxes to his car himself. 2 trips, and on the second trip, he paused in the hallway and looked at the brass hook by the door. Dad put that in, he said. First week we moved in, I said. He said every family needs somewhere to hang things when they come through the door. My son was quiet for a moment. Then he gave the hook a small pat with one hand, the way you touch something you want to remember. I'll call more, he said. I'd like that. He hugged me before he left. A real hug, not the kind that is just logistics. He held on for a moment, and I felt him there, really there. And I thought, there you are. There is the person I raised. I went back inside after his car had turned out of the lot, and I stood in my condo and listened to the silence. Not the tense quiet of a home with too many people in it and too little honesty. The deep, settled quiet of a space that belongs to itself again. I spent the following week preparing. Not frantically, I had known for some time what I would keep and what I would let go. My husband's chair went to his younger brother in Barrie, who had always loved it. The extra bedroom furniture I donated to a Syrian family in the neighborhood who had been making do with very little. The kitchen I packed last, because the kitchen held the most of him. His cast iron pan, the spice rack he built from a kit one weekend in 2001, the measuring spoons hung on a small hook that matched the one by the door. I found a new place through a listing Sandra sent me as a courtesy. A 1-bedroom in a low-rise building in Dundas, a quiet town west of Hamilton, 15 minutes from a conservation area and a walking trail that followed a creek through old beech trees. Rent was $1,400 a month, utilities included. The bedroom had a window that faced east and the bathroom had a heated floor, which, at 68 and with joints that have opinions about the Canadian winter, felt like the most significant luxury I had ever encountered. I signed the lease on a Monday. I gave Sandra the signed condo documents on Friday. That weekend, I packed what remained of my life into 11 boxes and my Civic. On the last evening in the condo, I made myself a simple dinner: scrambled eggs and toast, a cup of tea, a mandarin orange I peeled slowly at the kitchen table with the window open to the cold. The November dark had come early. The maple trees in the parking lot had shed everything now bare branches against the orange-gray glow of the streetlights. I had lived in this home for 31 years. I had raised my son here. I had held my husband's hand here at the kitchen table on the morning his diagnosis came, and I had sat here alone on the evening after the funeral, unable to eat anything but crackers, while neighbors I have always liked came and went with casseroles and kind faces. 31 years. And then 2 years of being slowly, quietly, gently, sidelined in my own space. Not with cruelty, not with intention, just with the creeping ease of taking something for granted until it stopped being visible. I washed my mug and plate, dried them, set them in the open box on the counter. The hook by the door was the last thing. I reached up and touched it, and I thought of my husband, his idea, his hands, his steady, simple wisdom about where things belong. I took the hook down gently. I wrapped it in a tea towel and set it in the top of the last box. It was coming with me. I turned off the lights room by room. The second bedroom last, where the window faced the parking lot and the bare maples. I stood there for a moment in the dark, and I thought about everything that had happened in those 2 years in that room, and everything that had shifted in the months since the vest, since the realtor, since the photograph being turned toward the wall. Then I closed the door. I walked through the hallway, picked up the box, and carried it down to the Civic. The drive to Dundas took just under an hour. I had the radio on low CBC Radio 1, a documentary about migratory birds. The highway was quiet at that hour. The dark fields along the 403 still held patches of old snow, glowing faintly in the moonlight. My new building was 3 stories, pale brick, a blue door that I already knew would be mine to come through every day from now on. I had 1 box in the car, and the rest coming in a small delivery the following morning. I carried the 1 box upstairs, unlocked my door, and stepped inside. The apartment smelled of clean paint and the faint pine of the hardwood floor. The east window was dark, but I knew that in a few hours it would fill with the early gray light of morning. I set the box on the counter and unwrapped the tea towel and took out my husband's hook. I set it on the kitchen table. Tomorrow I would find the right place for it. Tonight, I just wanted to see it. I made tea with the kettle I had left accessible for exactly this moment. I put on my warmest cardigan and stepped out onto the small balcony. The air smelled of creek water and old trees and the particular clean cold of Ontario November. Somewhere in the dark below, a branch knocked softly against another. The creek made its low, steady sound. I had not noticed until that moment how long it had been since I had stood somewhere and simply heard the world without needing to brace against it. I had not lost a home. I had kept every part of one that ever mattered, and I had walked away from the rest. My son texted me the next morning. A photo of a small room in Hamilton with morning light coming through a window, a coffee mug on the sill, his jacket hung neatly on a hook on the back of the door, and below the photo, 3 words, "Starting over, thank you." I sat on my bed in Dundas with my east window just beginning to fill with pale winter light and read those words twice. Then I set the phone down and looked at the sky, going slowly from gray to silver to the faint, impossible gold of the early sun, and I thought, yes, this is the right ending and the right beginning. So that was Margaret's story. Some of you will say she acted too slowly, that she should have set boundaries years earlier. Others might say family always comes first, no matter what. I think the truth sits somewhere quieter than either of those. Tell me what you think in the comments below. And if this story felt familiar to you, if any part of it was your life, I'd like to hear that too. Take care of yourselves, friends. I'll see you in the next one.